Hello everyone, welcome to Frightful Whispers. I'm here to guide you into the shadows tonight. I know you're using this video to unwind and drift off to sleep. So, before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? Now, get cozy, relax, and let the whispers of the night take over. I don't know why I chose that road. The one that wound through the thick woods, the one that seemed to swallow the car whole as I drove deeper into the dark. Maybe it was because I was so tired. My eyelids were heavy, the miles behind me blurring together into one long stretch of exhaustion. But when the headlights pierced through the fog and revealed the shape of a building ahead, I was relieved. A hotel, a place to rest. I slowed the car as the silhouette of the structure emerged from the mist, jagged and imposing. It looked ancient, like something out of a forgotten memory. Its stone walls were cracked, its shutters hanging crookedly, as though the building had been abandoned for decades. The windows were dark, like hollow eyes staring out into the emptiness of the surrounding forest. I wasn't picky. I just needed to get out of that car, away from the road that stretched endlessly before me. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, the tires made a soft crunching sound, and I couldn't help but notice the eerie stillness of the place. The light above the entrance flickered as I stepped out of the car. The air was damp, heavy, and there was a sharp, musty smell in the air, like mildew mixed with something else. Something foul. I wasn't superstitious, but standing there, looking at the darkened facade of the hotel, I felt something tighten in my chest. Something wasn't right. Still, I shook it off. All I wanted was a bed. I walked toward the entrance, my boots crunching on the gravel. The heavy wooden doors opened with a creak, as though they'd been waiting for me. The smell of dust and decay hit me immediately. The lobby was dimly lit, the light flickering like the last flickers of life in a dying ember. The walls were covered in faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges like the skin of something that had been left too long in the dark. And the air, it was thick, almost suffocating, like the building itself was holding its breath. I wasn't sure why, but something about the place unsettled me. The silence was too deep, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums that makes your skin itch. The floor beneath my feet was uneven, the tiles cracked and warped. And then I saw him, the bellboy. He was standing behind the counter, tall, too tall, with skin that was so pale it almost looked translucent. His features were sharp, hollow, like someone who had been forgotten by time itself. And those eyes, they weren't normal. They were deep, endless black, like two dark holes in a world that had no end. "Good evening, sir," he said, his voice smooth, too smooth. It was almost soothing, but I could feel it, the underlying unease that crept into my chest with every word he spoke. "We've been expecting you." I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I hadn't even made a reservation. Who was expecting me? I swallowed hard, trying to shake the chill creeping down my spine. "Expecting me?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me, shaky, unsure. The bellboy didn't respond right away. Instead, he smiled, and I felt something twist in the pit of my stomach. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile that was cold and calculating. He slid a tarnished brass key across the counter, its number 303 etched into its surface. The key felt heavy in my hand, cold and old, like it belonged to a different time. "Room 303, he said, his voice dropping lower as if sharing a secret. "It's a special room." "A special room?" I blinked, my hand already closing around the key, but I wasn't in the mood to argue, I just needed to sleep. "Special," I repeated, but he didn't answer. He simply pointed toward the elevator and I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything more. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my feet feeling like they were moving on their own. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as I glanced over my shoulder. The bellboy hadn't moved, still standing there with that unnerving smile, his eyes fixed on me. The elevator doors creaked open with a sound that sent a chill through me. Inside, the smell of old wood and metal filled the air, and I pressed the button for the 3rd floor. The elevator groaned as it ascended, and with each passing floor, the air seemed to grow thicker, heavier. The building was alive. It felt like it was breathing, like it was waiting for something. For me? I couldn't say, but the deeper I went into it, the more I felt like I was being drawn into something that had no intention of letting me go. The elevator stopped with a jolt on the 3rd floor, and I stepped out into a hallway that stretched longer than it should have. The flickering lights overhead cast odd shadows that seemed to slither across the walls. There was no sound, no voices, no movement, just an oppressive stillness. The carpet beneath my feet was worn, frayed at the edges. The walls, lined with peeling wallpaper, seemed to lean toward me, like they were closing in. I walked down the hallway, my steps echoing too loudly in the silence. The air felt heavier here, almost suffocating, and as I approached room 303, I felt it. The undeniable weight of something ancient, something malevolent, pressing against my chest. I reached for the door, my hand trembling. The door was slightly ajar, and when I pushed it open, the room revealed itself, vast, impossibly large, with no windows, only thick velvet curtains that seemed to absorb the light. The bed was enormous, draped in deep crimson sheets that shimmered in the dim glow. The room stretched endlessly in all directions, like it had no limits, no end. I should have turned around then. I should have left, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped inside, drawn by a force I couldn't explain. And that's when I heard her. "I've been here for years," a voice whispered. I spun around, my heart thundering in my chest. A woman was sitting by the window, her back to me, her voice trembling with a strange sorrow. "The hotel, it doesn't let you leave." I felt a chill creep up my spine as I took a step toward her. I tried to speak, to ask what she meant, but before I could say anything, the door slammed shut behind me with a sound that echoed like thunder, and I was trapped. Trapped. The room began to shift, and the walls groaned with a sound that seemed to vibrate through my bones. The bed moved, the sheets twisted, and the air grew thick, suffocating, like the room itself was alive. The woman turned toward me, her eyes empty, her voice a hollow echo. "I told you," she whispered, her words barely audible over the sound of the room's rumbling. "It won't let you go." And that's when I understood. This hotel, this place, this wasn't just a building, it was a prison. A prison for those who dared to enter. And once you stepped inside, there was no leaving. I was already a part of it. I had been driving for what felt like hours, my mind growing foggy from the endless stretch of road. The only thing that kept me going was the thought of a warm bed, a place to rest my weary bones. The night had swallowed me whole, the trees towering on either side of the road like silent watchers, their twisted branches reaching out to claim the sky. The headlights of my car cut through the thickening fog, but even they seemed weak, swallowed up by the vastness of the forest around me. I wasn't looking for anything special, just a place to lay my head for the night. That's when I saw it. The outline of a building appeared through the mist, its dark, looming shape a relief in the otherwise oppressive silence. A hotel, an old one. Something about the way it stood there in the middle of nowhere piqued my curiosity. but I pushed the thought aside. All I needed was to stop, to escape the relentless drive. I turned into the gravel parking lot, the tires crunching beneath me as I rolled to a stop under the flickering light of a lone street lamp. The hotel was imposing, the stone facade cracked and weathered with age. Ivy clung to its sides like an ancient skin, and the windows were dark, empty eyes staring out into the forest. It felt abandoned, like it had been forgotten by time itself. But I didn't care. I was too tired to be picky. A place to rest was all I needed. I stepped out of the car, the chill of the night air instantly biting at my skin. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked toward the entrance, the heavy wooden doors swinging open with a low groan. The scent of must and mildew hit me immediately, followed by something else. Something metallic, like the faint tang of iron or blood. The lobby was dimly lit, the flickering overhead lights casting long, distorted shadows on the cracked tile floor. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges like it had been left to decay for decades. It was silent, unnervingly silent. There were no guests bustling about, no clinking of glasses or murmurs of conversation. Just an oppressive stillness that seemed to press in from all sides. I didn't question it. I was tired. I needed sleep. Behind the counter stood a figure, a bellboy. He was tall, unnaturally tall, like a man stretched too thin. His skin was almost ghostly pale, and his eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to peer straight through me. He didn't move when I approached, just stood there, watching with an unsettling stillness. "Good evening, sir," he said, his voice smooth and oddly comforting. But there was something about the way he spoke, something too knowing, as if he already knew why I was here. "We've been expecting you." Expecting me? I hadn't made a reservation. I was just passing through, desperate for rest. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't like the way his gaze lingered, how it felt like he could see straight through me. "Expecting me," I repeated, trying to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me. It came out strained, uneasy. The bellboy smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was too thin, too deliberate, like he knew something I didn't. He slid a tarnished brass key across the counter, the number 303 etched into it in delicate script. "Room 303, he said, his voice dropping slightly, almost as if he were sharing a secret. "It's a special room." Special? I didn't know what he meant, and I didn't care. All I wanted was to sleep. I took the key without another word, my fingers brushing against the cold metal. The bellboy's gaze never left me as I turned and walked toward the elevator, the faint sound of his soft laughter trailing behind me. The third floor. The elevator doors creaked open, revealing an unnerving silence that seemed to engulf me the moment I stepped inside. The metal was cold beneath my fingertips as I pressed the button for the third floor. The elevator groaned, its old machinery protesting as it slowly began its ascent. I couldn't help but feel a strange tension in the air, as if the building itself was alive, aware of my presence. The lights flickered above, casting distorted shadows along the walls. With each floor we passed, the air grew heavier, more suffocating. I shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the flickering light above, the low hum of the elevator filling the otherwise oppressive silence. The walls seemed to close in around me, and I fought the urge to reach for the button to stop the lift, to turn around and leave. But it was too late for that. The elevator jerked to a stop on the third floor, the sudden movement jarring. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the hallway, my footsteps too loud in the thick, suffocating silence. The hall stretched out in front of me, dimly lit, the overhead light flickering weakly. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, yellowed with age, their once vibrant patterns now faded into nothingness. The floor creaked beneath my boots, the sound echoing too loudly in the dead quiet of the hall. There were no other sounds, no voices, no rustling, no indication of life anywhere. It felt like I had stepped into another world, one that had been left behind, forgotten. Each step I took seemed to drag me deeper into this strange, oppressive place. I walked down the hall, drawn to the door at the end, the number 303 above it barely visible, worn away by time. The door was slightly ajar, a faint light spilling out from within. I hesitated for a moment, but the weight of my exhaustion made the decision for me. I pushed the door open, and as it creaked on its hinges, I stepped inside. The room was enormous, far larger than any hotel room had the right to be. The walls seemed to stretch up into nothingness, and the dim light that filtered through the curtains gave the space a strange, unreal quality. It felt as if the room went on forever, its boundaries undefined, its dimensions warped in a way that made me feel small and insignificant. There were no windows, only thick, dark curtains that covered the walls from floor to ceiling. The bed was huge, its 4 posts twisted and gnarled like the roots of an ancient tree. The crimson sheets shimmered in the low light, almost as if they were alive, rippling with an unsettling fluidity. I was too tired to care. I just wanted to sleep, to escape the nagging sense that something was terribly wrong with this place. But when I turned to make my way toward the bed, I saw her. She was sitting in the far corner of the room, her back to me, her posture stiff and unnatural. She wore a long, tattered gown that looked like it belonged to a different time. Something old, forgotten. Her dark hair cascaded down her back in tangled waves, but it was her stillness that caught me. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there, facing the corner. For a moment I thought I might have imagined her. But then, her voice broke the silence. "I've been here for years," she said, her voice soft, trembling with something I couldn't name. "This hotel, it doesn't let you leave." I froze, my heart slamming into my ribs. Her words hung in the air, a warning I couldn't yet comprehend. She turned slowly, her eyes empty. No, not empty, hollow, as though life had been drained from her, leaving only the shell of a woman who had once been. "This place," she whispered, her voice fragile but certain. "It traps you, it never lets you go." The woman's words lingered in the air like a heavy fog, wrapping itself around me. "This place, it doesn't let you leave." I stood there, frozen, unable to shake the chill that gripped my spine. It wasn't just her words that unnerved me. It was the way she said them, like she knew the truth of it, as if she had lived through the horror herself for far too long. My eyes flickered to the door, desperate to escape, but before I could take a step, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, steady. Someone was coming, and I knew, in that moment, it wasn't a guest or anyone who could help. No, this was something else. Something far worse. The door creaked open, and there he was. The bellboy. I had seen him earlier, standing at the counter with that unsettling gaze, but now, up close, he seemed even more out of place, more wrong. His figure loomed in the doorway, impossibly tall and impossibly thin, like a shadow cast too long. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent under the dim light, and his eyes, those endless black pools, they were hollow, deep. They didn't just look at you, they penetrated you, like they could see everything about you, even the things you tried to hide from yourself. He stepped into the room, the door swinging closed behind him with an eerie finality, as if trapping us inside. I wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. My heart pounded in my chest as I found myself rooted to the spot, unable to move, my eyes drawn to him. "I see you've met her," he said, his voice smooth, almost soothing, but there was an edge to it, a coldness that made my skin crawl. He glanced over at the woman in the corner, his smile thin and calculating. "She's been here a long time. Much longer than you, I imagine." My mouth went dry. What is this place?" I managed to force out, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. There was an edge of panic rising in my chest, but I tried to keep it down, tried to stay calm. But it was hard to ignore the feeling that something was closing in, something far bigger than me, something I couldn't control. The bellboy tilted his head, that predatory smile never leaving his face. "This place, it's not just a hotel, it's a prison, a living, breathing prison. And you," he paused, his eyes narrowing on me with that unsettling intensity. "You've walked right into it." I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. A prison? The idea didn't make sense. This was just a hotel, a decrepit old hotel. Yet his words felt too real, too true to ignore. I felt a tightness in my chest as the weight of his words settled in. "You're not just here to rest," he continued, his voice low, almost as if he were sharing a dark secret. "No, you're here because the hotel wants you here. It has been waiting for you." I shook my head, trying to dismiss his words, but deep down, I felt the truth of it, like a cold hand gripping my heart. Waiting for me? Before I could respond, the bellboy took a slow step toward me, his movements unnaturally smooth. "You think you're just another guest," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "But you're not. The hotel doesn't take just anyone. No, it chooses those it wants to keep." I backed up, my feet stumbling over the floorboards, my mind racing. I don't understand," I gasped, my breath coming in ragged bursts. "What do you mean? What is this place?" The bellboy's grin widened, and I could see it now, something ancient, something primal in his eyes. "This hotel," he said, his voice growing more and more chilling, "is a living entity. It feeds on those who enter. It's not just a building, it's a creature, a predator." I blinked, trying to comprehend the words he was saying. A creature? A predator? This was insane. This couldn't be real. And yet, something in the air, the very walls of this place, told me otherwise. Something was wrong. Something far more sinister than I could possibly understand. "The rooms aren't just rooms," the bellboy continued, his tone growing darker with each word. "They're doors. Not doors to another part of the hotel, but doors to other places, other dimensions. This hotel, it connects them all, and once you enter, you're trapped. The walls shift, the rooms change, and you can never find your way out." The room seemed to shrink as he spoke, the shadows growing longer, darker. My mind raced, but I couldn't make sense of anything. This wasn't possible. A living hotel, shifting rooms? I was trapped, but why? Why was I here? What did this place want from me? The bellboy stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "You think you can just check in and check out? No, it doesn't work like that. The hotel chooses you, and when it does, you're never really free. You become a part of it." His smile widened, and for a moment, I could swear I saw something far darker flicker behind his eyes. Just like her. I turned to the woman in the corner, the one who had warned me. She was still there, sitting motionless, her eyes fixed on me with a hollow, empty gaze. I could see now that she wasn't just a woman. She was a part of this place, just like the bellboy said. She had been consumed, like the rest of them, by this living, breathing hotel. "How long?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. "How long has she been here?" The bellboy's smile faltered for the briefest moment, a flicker of something almost human crossing his face. Long enough to know the truth. Long enough to understand that once the hotel takes you, you can't leave. Not unless it wants you to, and it never wants you to. I turned away from the woman, my body trembling, my mind screaming for me to run. But my legs wouldn't obey. The air in the room was thick with the weight of his words, the suffocating presence of something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. "You'll understand soon enough," the bellboy said softly, his voice like a whisper in my ear, as if he was right behind me. "The hotel doesn't let you go. It never lets anyone go." I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest. "No, I won't stay here. I can't. I can't!" I shouted, the desperation in my voice rising. The bellboy stepped forward, blocking the door. "You're already a part of it," he said, his voice a soft, final whisper. "The hotel knows you, and once it has you, it never lets you go." The floor beneath me shifted, the walls closing in as if the hotel itself was breathing, swallowing me whole. I tried to scream, to fight, but the room twisted around me, the shadows wrapping themselves tighter with each breath I took. The bellboy's smile never faltered. It was the last thing I saw before everything around me turned to darkness. And that was when I understood. This hotel had never let anyone go, not a single soul. And now it had me too. I can't explain why I moved. Maybe it was the way the bellboy looked at me, like I was just another victim, another lost soul destined to become a part of this cursed hotel. Maybe it was the oppressive weight of the air in that room, pressing against my chest like 100 invisible hands. Or maybe it was just pure panic. Survival instinct kicking in, the need to escape overriding all rational thought. I had to get out. I turned to the door, my hand shot out, trembling, reaching for the handle. Please, please, let it open. But when my fingers touched the cold metal, I felt nothing. Nothing but the ice-cold slickness of it, like it had been frozen in time, mocking me. The door wouldn't budge. I twisted the handle, yanked at it with all my strength, but it was as though it had fused to the frame. The lock was stuck. My heart pounded harder, faster, as if it too knew what was coming. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls groaning in protest. The air grew thicker, and I could almost feel the very structure of the hotel tightening around me, suffocating me. I turned, my mind spinning, desperate for anything that resembled an exit. There was no way out. I was trapped in this nightmare just like the woman in the corner, just like the bellboy who had waited for me to arrive. And then I heard it. The faintest sound, so soft at first I thought it might be my imagination. A low hum, a song, distant yet somehow impossibly close. It was a melody I had heard before, deep in the shadows of the hotel. But now it was different, twisted, wrong. It wasn't sweet or soothing. It was twisted, like a lullaby sung by something far darker than any human voice could ever manage. I stumbled backward, my breath ragged. My heart raced, each beat like a drum of panic, drowning out the humming, the whispers. My vision blurred as I felt the walls shifting, pressing in on me. "No, no, no, no," I gasped, my legs moving on their own, dragging me through the suffocating hallway. But the hallway was wrong too. The walls bent unnaturally, and the light above flickered erratically, casting shadows that moved like living things, slithering across the floor and up the walls. The air was thick, heavy, like it had weight. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, as though the hotel was shifting beneath me with every step. I had to get out. I didn't know how. I didn't care how. I just had to get away from the bellboy, from this place. And then, through the madness of the shifting walls and the sickly melody playing from the bowels of the hotel, I saw it. A door. It appeared out of nowhere. No warning, no sign of where it came from, just a heavy wooden door standing before me. And the moment I saw it, I ran. My feet barely touched the ground as I flew toward it, my hands reaching out. The door creaked as I yanked it open, and when I stepped through, a rush of cold air hit me. I stumbled into another room. But this room, it wasn't like the others. It was real. There were windows, real windows. I could see the night outside, the sky, a pale, starless expanse, and the faint glow of streetlights beyond. The air was fresh, cool, and I could taste the freedom in it. It was real. It felt like I was free. I rushed to the window, the glass cool against my palms, my heart racing with hope. I slid the window open, my hands slick with sweat as I pulled it wide. The sound of it opening was almost deafening in the otherwise silent room. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I climbed through, my hands scraping against the brick as I forced myself to push forward. I was outside. I was free. But as I took that first step onto the grass, something twisted in the pit of my stomach. A cold, creeping sensation that told me something was wrong. The air felt heavy again. The ground beneath my feet. It didn't feel right. I looked up, and that's when I saw it. The hotel. It stood before me, tall and imposing against the night sky. But it wasn't like the world I had just stepped into. No, it was wrong. It shouldn't have been here. It was too close, too real. And as I stared at it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The windows, the rooms, they were shifting. Not just the walls, but the rooms themselves. They were pulsing, warping, as if they were breathing in time with the music, the melody, still echoing in my ears. And then, there he was, the bellboy. He stood in the doorway of the hotel, the same predatory smile on his face. His eyes glinted in the dim light, dark and knowing. I could feel his gaze pierce me in that smile. It was a taunt, a reminder that I had never truly escaped. He knew it. I knew it. "You can't leave," his voice carried across the distance, low and mocking, as if this were some sick game. "Not ever. Not once the hotel has chosen you." I froze. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But my legs wouldn't move. The air around me was thick again, heavier, pressing in on me from all sides. I'm outside, I'm free. But the realization hit me all at once, like a slap to the face. I wasn't free. I was still trapped. The hotel hadn't let me go. It never had. It had always been with me. I looked around, hoping for some shred of the world I had known, hoping for an escape. But everything felt wrong. The world around me bent, twisted, like it was trying to swallow me whole. The sky, the trees, the ground, all warped, changing, just like the hotel. It was all part of it. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The bellboy's smile stretched wider, his eyes glowing with that dark, knowing hunger. "You're already part of it," he said softly, his voice like poison. "And once you're in, there's no way out. You will never leave." The world around me began to fold, the horizon bending and warping as the hotel's presence consumed everything in its path. The buildings, the trees, the very ground beneath me, all of it twisted like it was being reshaped by some dark force. And in that moment I understood. There was no escape. The hotel had never let me go. It had always been waiting for me. And now, I was part of it forever. Thank you for venturing into the shadows with me here at Frightful Whispers. Remember, the darkness holds secrets, but also whispers truths to those who dare to listen. If tonight's tale sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep the fire of fright alive. Rest easy, but keep one eye open, for the night is never truly still. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, stay curious, and let the whispers guide you.